In 2023, I did not buy a single book for my own enjoyment. Well, kind of. I'm going to get into the details, but I was on a book buying ban for a full year from the end of 2022 to the end of 2023. And in my mind, I succeeded, but there's some details that mean you might not agree with me. So today I'm going to tell you why I did the ban, how it worked, how I did, and what that means for next year. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Sam. I'm a romance author based in the UK. I saw a post online recently that said there are bookworms and then there are book dragons, where book dragons just like to hoard books. And I find that sometimes describes me too. And by sometimes, I mean literally all the time. I think most people who love books love like having books. And as someone who's a major mood reader, I really like having options on my shelf that I haven't read for when I'm in the mood for something in particular. I'm not a big rereader, and so I like having lots of books I haven't read on my shelf. I never want that to not be the case. However, over the last few years, I've found that I spend way too much money on books, and my book buying habits were really reflective of an overall consumerism that I wanted to curb in my life. And I did a lot of growth last year in other areas of my life in terms of my spending as well. But books were one area where that consumerism was really flagrant. If I saw it and I liked the sound of it, or sometimes even just liked the cover, I would just buy it. And because it was a book and not clothing or furniture or decorations or something, it felt like it was okay. It's like, yeah, but it's a book. You should have lots of books. And while I do still like having lots of books, and I have no intention of ever not having lots of books, I don't think that that's the right way to be consuming anything, books included. So not just the money factor, but also just the way that I was buying books. I really wanted to try to curb that. And so I set up for myself some rules for 2023 to try to create some habits around spending and around reading that would be sustainable. Let's be clear, my goal was not to go cold turkey. I cannot read any new books, anything that's not on my shelf, anything like that, because I know myself and I know that if I had broken a rule, I would have thrown the whole thing out the window. So I needed the rules to allow for enough flexibility for me that it wasn't going to be a problem. So let me tell you how I set up my ban. I listened to a lot of books on audio, and I knew that wasn't going to change. My local library doesn't have a great selection of audiobooks, and so I allowed myself to keep my Audible subscription and my BookBeat subscription. At the time, I was on 2 credits a month on Audible and 50 hours a month on BookBeat. And I was using those most months. I also had pre-ordered a lot of 2023 releases, and I of course let myself keep those pre-orders. Most of them were for the first half of the year, and I found that halfway through the year, I didn't actually have that many more to look forward to, and I had enjoyed receiving those pre-orders. So halfway through the year, I let myself pre-order 6 more, so 1 per month for the rest of the year. Other than that, I could not buy any books for myself to read. So I did 2 main things to help with that. First of all, my friend Katie and I did a book swap where we each gave each other 13 books, 1 for each month and then a backup, that we wrapped up and packaged as blind date with a book packages, and that was super fun. I opened one every single month. I didn't get around to reading all of them. I'll come to all my reading stats in a minute, but it was so fun to like have a new book to open each month, and that combined with the pre-orders, I think gave me the dopamine hit of new books that I needed to sort of make it so I could sustain the challenge. I've got a whole other video on how we set that up and the books that I gave to Katie, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. And then of course the other thing that I did was get a library card. I had never used the local library here. It's a very small one, and I didn't know that I could order books from the entire network to have brought to the local library. So as soon as I started doing that, it was game over. So those were the rules of the book buying ban. And I started this just before Christmas in 2022 and wanted to run it all the way through 2023 up until a trip that I was taking for New Year's. That was going to be a trip with my friend to Hay-on-Wye, which is the world's first book town in Wales. And I've recently posted a vlog of my trip there, so I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. So let's talk about how I did, because like I said at the beginning, it is probably up to you to decide whether you think that I succeeded in my book buying ban. I think that I did, so let me tell you about that. I did end up purchasing 9 books in 2023, other than my pre-orders, but I don't view them as breaking my ban, and let me tell you why. Like I said, I'm a romance author, and sometimes I need to read books for research. There are a lot of books that I bought and read this year that I would not have picked up on my own if I wasn't reading them to research a location or a point of view or a trope that I was trying to incorporate into the story I was working on. In particular, I was working on a project early in 2023 that necessitated I read a few travel memoirs. Then when I started on my next book, You've Got Chainmail, which by the way is out on the 15th of August. Don't forget to pre-order. The link is in the description as always. My publisher actually suggested that I read 3 different books. And then I had one other project that I was doing research on that I bought 2 nonfiction books about dreams. A little teaser for a future project there. So to me, I don't count that as breaking the ban because it was basically, I was buying them for work. I was buying them for not my full-time job, but my job as an author. Now, another area where you might think it's up for debate as to whether I succeeded or not is around the goal of curbing my consumerism behaviors. And this really came out when it came to how I used the library. I went on a rampage at the beginning of the year going through every single place where I had any kind of wish list, bookmarks on Instagram and TikTok, my Amazon wish list, my Goodreads want to read list, and just like requesting tons of library books. And throughout the year, I got tons of them coming through at different stages depending on how many people were in the line ahead of me. And it meant that there were times where I had like 12 to 15 library books out at once. And that was not fun because, like I said, I'm a mood reader and I have really severe demand avoidance. And so if I'm like, have a deadline of like 15 different books that I need to read in like 3 weeks because that's when they're all due, or I need to remember to renew them or whatever, I'm not going to want to do that. I'm going to want to read anything else. And it actually took a lot of the joy out of it for me. I think I still have a long way to go in terms of curbing that consumerism, even if that's through the library, even if I'm not spending my own money on it. And actually, let's be clear, I did spend some of my own money on it because I definitely racked up some fines. The final way that you might debate whether or not I succeeded is how many of the books on my actual physical TBR I ended up reading, because the answer was not many. In the end, in 2023, I read 138 books. 5 of those were from my book swap with my friend Katie. I only read 5 out of 13 of those books. 11 of those were from the pre-orders that I had placed out of 25. Not a great hit rate there either, given that I supposedly was excited enough about them to pre-order them. I checked out a total of 48 books from the library throughout the year, and I read 35 of them. I had to return 13 of them without reading them because they were due back and I couldn't renew them because someone else had reserved them. And in the end, I only read 6 physical books that were already on my shelf at the beginning of the year. Now, having heard all of that, you might not think that I succeeded in my book buying ban, but to me, I feel that I did. And so what I allowed myself to do was, when I was in Hey On Why with my friend, I spent some National Book Token vouchers that I'd gotten for my birthday on new books. It was more than a year after I'd started the ban, so I don't see it as breaking the ban. I see it as like a nice little reward, a little punctuation between the 2023 ban and what will be the 2024 ban. Because yes, I'm going to be continuing this into next year, as I'm sure you could tell from the title of this video. So, am I happy with how 2023 went? Mostly yes. Do I have some changes I want to make for next year? Also yes. I think I have gotten a lot better over the last couple of months at how I use the library and not reserving so many books, not having so many books out at once. I think there's also a mindset shift that needed to happen for me, which is I can return it without having read it if I need to, because it's not going anywhere. The library is still going to have it. And yes, someone might have requested it after me, but I can just go back on the wait list and read it again later. So getting rid of that scarcity mindset around library books sounds really silly, but I think it's finally kicked in. It took like 10 or 11 months for it to kick in, but I think it finally has. I am still letting myself have pre-orders, but I've been a lot stricter about what pre-orders I will allow myself to make. This time I'm only pre-ordering from authors that I know I will love. I've actually done a whole video about the books that I've pre-ordered and my pre-order strategy for next year, so I'll leave a link in the description. I'm making quite the playlist for you for after this video, sorry. So keeping the pre-orders. I am also keeping my audio subscriptions. However, anymore, I am actually going to be dropping those down, and I have already as of filming this video. So Audible is down to 1 credit a month and BookBeat is down to 20 hours a month. I do also have Spotify Premium, so I do get 15 hours a month through that. But even then, I'll maybe be able to read 4 books a month on audio doing this, which is a max of 48 books in the year, which is definitely fewer audiobooks than I read last year. So keeping my pre-orders, kind of keeping my audio subscriptions. And then of course I need to change the way that I use the library. And for me, that's going to be a challenge to not have more than 4 books checked out at any one time. Now, I have more than that out from the library right now, which means that I need to find a way to fix that. I'm going to be doing a little reading challenge, almost like a sudden death reading challenge coming up to try to decide which of the library books I have out and which of the books that Katie has loaned me that I haven't read yet, I actually want to read, and I'm going to be super, super quick with the DNFs on it. Make sure you're subscribed so that you see that when it comes out. I think it's going to be a really fun video. And then finally, I am going to be challenging myself to read 1 physical book that's already on my shelves as of now each month. So that will be 12 in the year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is double how many I read last year. And I feel like that's a pretty reasonable goal. Now, if you've been doing the math, and I've got a max of 48 audiobooks that I can read in the year, a max of like 3 library books that I can read per month, which is like 36, and 12 from my own shelves. That's a total of 96. That is significantly less than the 138 that I read last year. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly happy to go into 2024 expecting and almost planning to read less because I want to really be able to be present with all of the stories that I'm immersed in. I've seen a lot of dialogue on social media about people wanting to do stuff like this, really roll back their reading, not set such rigid goals, maybe buy fewer books. And I'd love to know if you were doing something like that. It's always really validating when other people are also on a similar journey to you. So let me know in the comments if you've got similar reading goals, or I guess if you're doing the opposite and you're like, you know what? No, this is going to be the year that I become one of those people that reads like 40 books a month. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.